This is Operations Officer Han Osborne, also known as Barking Dog 9, also known as Windfall. I work for the CIA as a operations officer in the National Clandestine Service, and I'm a non-official cover kind of agent, and that means I'm a real spy, a true blue patriot. So anyway, in addition to collecting intelligence and doing all the nasty things spies do, sometimes killing people, and being basically at a point where I'm trying to be the bunny, and of course the hunters are looking for the bunny. Let's catch the bunny and kill it. Anyway. So, the United States developed the atomic bomb, which changed the whole idea of warfare. War became unthinkable and to most people's minds, because it would only result in the human population being devastated and possibly the whole world being uninhabitable. Of course, now the world has become uninhabitable at times, in history going way, way back. Way, way back. You know what I mean? So anyway, one of the first, of course, bombs was on Hiroshima. That was the atomic bomb dropped on Hiroshima, was dropped by a B-29 Stratofortress, long-range bomber. Anyway, and then so long-range bombers were the delivery method for nuclear weapon payloads. There's also we developed a tactical shell at some point, which was capable of launching or firing a tactical nuclear weapon from a large cannon. Then they developed rockets. Rockets, of course, were able to carry nuclear payloads. Anyway, the Soviets we developed our B-52. The Soviets developed a Tu-95, and these were the long-range bombers for both sides. So anyway, there was a report in probably 1950s, probably late 1950s, when someone in a field station under the umbrella of the National Security Agency. I worked for the National Security Agency in the mid-70s. Found through intercepts that probably a Tu-95 had landed and taken off from a waterway. That is, a water surface, an unfrozen water surface. That is a lake or an inland sea, possibly even part of the ocean. This was deemed critical information, sensitive, critical, and urgent. It was sent by Critic, and of course the Critic message, of course, goes to the President. The President finds out that, oh my God, the Soviets have developed a bomber that can land and take off on the water. They basically can land and take off anywhere on the ocean, which of course the ocean surrounds the United States to a large extent. Not the Soviet Union so much, but the United States. So basically, almost any place on the United States where there are major cities could be disrupted or destroyed by a Soviet long-range bomber landing near that city and then basically releasing this payload. Well, this was deemed a first strike weapon. This was tantamount to an act of war. But, of course, according to the story I was told at NSA back in probably around 1975 by a Polish man who was a civilian who was responsible for the Rumble, the Russian Uniform Military Radio Listing, which is still classified information, of course. Big book of frequencies, day and night. So anyway, it appears that the Soviets leveraged this tactic to basically cause the U.S. to knuckle under. And they knuckle under. Under Eisenhower, they knuckle under. They capitulate. basically the U.S. was forced to relinquish part and parcel of its retaliatory force, its nuclear retaliatory force. And at that point, the Soviets had pure dominance, complete and pure dominance. And the Chinese had nothing near what the Soviets had. And of course, they had what we had. They took control of our nuclear arsenal. And as a consequence, we became their puppet. They could do what they want with us. They could change our society. They could modify our policies. They could do anything. And so they did. They did terrible and drastic things to the United States, which of course resulted in backfiring on them to a certain extent. But the Chinese were able to dig up a little gold piece of intelligence, which they conveyed to the Soviets, which caused so much turmoil in their Soviet general staff and leadership that it resulted in the Soviet Union's eventual demise. So that left the United States, which of course was not its own boss. It was a slave, and the master, of course, could be anyone who bought the key to the code, the gold code. And so our nuclear arsenal was maintained by us, but it was not for our benefit. In fact, it was against us should we decide to defy our masters. Who are our masters? Well, historically, great, terrible things have emerged from the deep. And at some point, these things, though long buried, arise again. So it's my impression that somewhere in a hole deep in the ground, something with an M and a W, like Mary Jane, but not Mary Jane. You know what I'm saying? Get what I'm saying? D-O-M-D-O. I want a monkey, yo. Anyway, this became the master. This is the master. It was long ago that the master had pure dominance over the entire globe. But then God, being God, took control and just basically smited them. So anyway, the Jews still have some autonomy. We don't have an autonomy, except for, of course, my friends, the few, the proud, and the people that dig deep into the ground to dig out the truth. And the truth, my friend, is that from 1958 onward, the United States was a puppet of the Soviets, and then later on a puppet of whoever bought the United States. The United States was up for sale, and we were sold like whores, basically. We were bitches. We were punks. They could do what they want with us. The goddamn communists had our balls, and they cut them off. You know, so that's basically it. But there was a point, probably in 1984, that we emerged, and we allowed ourselves some hope, some faith that our fate was not sealed, and that we could change our fate. And I think now, year 2012, we have come to the point where our fate will not be as our masters want it to be, but as we want it to be. And so this will be the case. Anyway, that's the gist of my conversation. I found gold when I dug back into my past, and I gleaned this information, and I'm using this information to basically alert any and all of you who still have some semblance of autonomy and are not under the thumb of fucking devils that seem to control our fate now, that we can rise again, become what God would want us to be. above sin. But now, my God, we're fucking deep in it. We're still deep in it. So let's think about it. Here, I do code speed. It's not hard. Once you learn it, it's easy to do. It's like a second language. And so when Eisenhower gave his last speech, he talked about the military-industrial complex. That speech, the subtext of that speech is all about what has happened, the horror that we face, the terrible, terrible consequences of having our fate ruled, our society ruled by people who are utterly evil. But the idea that we can have hope, we have sought help from the highest authorities, we will find our way out of the abyss. Today is, of course, the 29th of January 2012, and it is about 8:10 a.m. Pacific Standard Time, and I'm on Aurora Avenue at about 152nd Street. And I have a plan. This is my plan. Within the next 2 to 3 weeks, I'm going to get some